This is a full story. Kitten wishes you all a happy and enjoyable story. My childhood sweetheart and well-matched fiancée Hailey fell in love with a poor student in our class. To marry the one she loved, she endured immense pressure from her entire family and broke off our engagement. Heartbroken I went abroad to further my studies. By the time I returned, her son was already nearly a year old. Fortunately, I had long since let go of her, but unexpectedly she regretted her decision. She knelt before me, tears streaming down her face, and choked out, "Rocky, I was wrong. Can we start over?" On my second day back home, my childhood friends hosted a grand welcome banquet for me. But what I didn't expect was that Hailey would show up. 3 years ago, in front of both our families, she publicly called off our engagement. At our own engagement party, her voice trembling with emotion as she declared, "A marriage without love will never be happy." I could hardly believe my ears. We had been neighbors since we were 5, growing up together as childhood sweethearts. We had been in a relationship for over 3 years, and I had always believed our love was unbreakable, irreplaceable. But now she was standing in front of everyone saying that there was no love between us. "Rocky, I've always seen you as my older brother since we were kids, but feelings can't be forced. If there's no love, then there's no love." Her words made my heart plummet into an icy abyss. I couldn't hold back my question. "We've been together for over 3 years. Why didn't you feel forced during that time?" She knew she was in the wrong and could only cover her face and sob. Seeing how utterly unwilling she was to marry me, I took a deep breath, struggling to suppress my surging emotions. Then I turned to everyone present and announced, "The engagement is canceled." With that, I ripped off my bow tie, threw it to the ground, and walked away without looking back, leaving the chaotic engagement party behind. With things reaching this point, there was no way our two families could maintain the good relationship we once had. Even our company's stock prices suffered significantly. To move on as quickly as possible, I chose to study abroad alone. That decision led to 3 years away, only returning a few days ago. Now, looking at Hailey standing before me after all this time, I felt like a lifetime had passed. She now sported long, wavy black hair and wore bold red lipstick. Every movement she made exuded the charm of a mature woman. She was completely different from the fresh and innocent girl I once knew. I turned to Peter, the friend hosting today's gathering. He had already noticed my displeasure at Hailey's unexpected presence and quickly whispered to me, "I swear I didn't invite her. I have no idea how she got here." Hailey seemed to sense that she was unwelcome and took the initiative to approach me, speaking gently. "Rocky, it's been so many years. You're not still holding a grudge against me, are you? I was too immature back then and hurt you. That's why I shamelessly came today to apologize." I frowned, slightly unsure of her true intentions. After all, she never thought she was wrong before, always proclaiming that true love is never a sin. Seeing my indifference, her eyes suddenly welled up with tears. "Are you really still hung up on the past?" she asked in a trembling voice. Her teary, pitiful expression made it seem as if I would be petty and unforgiving if I said I still cared. I picked up a glass of baijiu and said lightly, "Old insignificant matters, I forgot about them long ago. Oh, by the way, Peter told me you married Tony. Congratulations on getting what you wished for. This drink is a toast to you." Hearing this, she forced a bitter smile, picked up a glass of her own, and downed it in one go, though it felt more like she was drinking her sorrows away. After officially taking our seats, the group exchanged warm greetings. Since I was the guest of honor, the conversation naturally revolved around me. Peter jokingly complained, "Rocky, you work so hard. Do you even leave room for us to survive? After finishing your master's in Germany, you immediately helped your family expand overseas markets. And now you're even getting into the booming electric vehicle industry. My old man keeps nagging me at home, telling me to learn from you instead of just chasing girls all day." I simply smiled and said, "It's just an interest of mine." Hailey, sitting beside us, suddenly teased, "Rocky, when did you become so modest?" Her tone was filled with familiarity, as if she had never humiliated me in public 3 years ago. I didn't respond, just took a sip of my drink, but she continued, talking to herself. "I actually bought one of your company's newest electric cars at an auto show last month. The driving experience is great, just as good as any imported luxury brand." I politely thanked her for her support. She, however, looked at me intently and replied in a suggestive tone, "Do we really need to say thank you to each other?" At this, not only I, but the entire group sensed that something was off. Their gazes flickered between us with subtle curiosity. To avoid any misunderstandings, I kept my expression neutral and asked Hailey, "By the way, why didn't your husband come today? say, "We were all classmates, shouldn't you have invited him too?" The moment I said that, the playful smile on Hailey's face vanished. She pursed her lips and frowned, muttering, "He was busy and couldn't make it." I had no idea why she sounded so displeased when mentioning Tony. Wasn't he the love of her life? At that moment, a friend came to toast me, finally breaking the awkward atmosphere. As the night went on, we reminisced about our childhood memories, but no one brought up the past between Hailey and me again. After the gathering, we stepped out of the club and saw Tony sitting on a sofa in the lobby. The moment the elevator doors opened, he immediately shot up from his seat. It seemed he had been waiting for us to come out. Tony quickly approached, but when he saw me, his expression darkened, as if he had encountered a formidable rival. I found his reaction utterly baffling. Then, in front of everyone, Hailey snapped at him, "What are you doing here? Didn't I tell you to stay home?" Hailey's blatant disdain for Tony surprised me, but Tony seemed used to it. He didn't seem upset at all. Instead, he smiled and reached out to hold her hand, but Hailey turned to the side, avoiding his touch. Tony awkwardly rubbed his empty hand and explained patiently, "The baby was crying from hunger and the milk in the fridge was all gone. So I thought I'd come pick you up early to nurse him. Oh, and I brought the breast pump. If you're feeling engorged, you can." Before he could finish, Hailey's face darkened and she cut him off harshly. "Enough, Tony. Shut up already." We were all in our mid-20s, but among us, Hailey was the only one who had married and had a child. So when Tony started talking about nursing and engorgement in public, the atmosphere turned awkward. But Tony seemed oblivious to why Hailey was suddenly angry. He hesitantly asked in a small voice, "Hailey, did I say something wrong again?" Clearly, this kind of embarrassment had happened to them many times before. Hailey showed him no mercy and scolded him in front of everyone. "I already said I'd come home after dinner. Why do you have to embarrass me like this?" Tony looked lost, like a child who had done something wrong. Even now, he still didn't understand why Hailey was so furious or what he had said wrong. Nobody explained it to him. Nobody taught him how to act in social situations. Everyone just laughed at him, but he didn't even know why. A few days after the welcome banquet, Peter called me. He asked, "What are you up to?" I replied, "Reviewing last year's financial statements for the company." He was silent for a moment, then suddenly asked seriously, "Let me ask you something, and I want you to answer honestly. Do you still have feelings for Hailey?" Hearing this, I couldn't help but laugh. How could I still have feelings for her? On the other end, Peter paused before saying, "I think Hailey might regret marrying Tony. Actually, before you returned to the country, she asked me about you several times." I scoffed but didn't respond. Peter, unaware of my irritation, continued talking about Hailey. It turns out that after I went abroad, Hailey's parents were still firmly against her relationship with Tony. But Hailey was probably deeply in love with Tony at the time, insisting she would marry no one else. Even when her parents kicked her out, she refused to break up with him. Unable to change her mind, her parents held out for a few months before finally compromising and agreeing to their marriage. However, on the wedding day, Tony's family embarrassed Hailey's family. Although Tony came from a poor background, he had a large family. Wanting to show off, Tony's parents invited distant relatives, who all came with their families, to the wedding banquet. Hailey, probably wanting to save face for Tony, didn't hold separate receptions. Both Hailey's business associates and Tony's relatives and friends were in the same banquet hall. That day, Tony's uncle, wanting to assert dominance over the bride, demanded that Hailey kneel and kowtow to him during the toast, claiming it was a tradition in their hometown. But Hailey, who had been pampered and adored all her life, refused to comply. She directly ignored him, infuriating Tony's uncle, who flipped the table in anger. Hailey's parents were so shocked they ended up in the hospital. After the wedding, Tony's family didn't restrain themselves, often using Hailey's family name to flaunt and cause trouble. Hailey's parents had to deal with numerous issues, such as Tony's brother causing injury while driving drunk, his uncle borrowing money to buy a house in a good school district, and his aunt wanting her child to attend school in the city. Hearing all this, I suddenly recalled the time Hailey explained why she fell in love with Tony. The night before I went abroad, Hailey came to see me. She confessed that she called off our engagement because she had fallen in love with someone else, and that person was our college classmate Tony. When I heard his name, my first reaction was shock. I thought, how is that possible? Although Tony was decent looking, he was introverted, completely different from the always lively and cheerful Hailey. Not to mention the vast differences in their family backgrounds and upbringing. It would be hard for such two people to even become friends, let alone a couple. I couldn't help but ask her what she saw in Tony. She smiled brightly and said, "During the time you were abroad for your internship, he would bring me homemade scallion pancakes, take me to learn skateboarding on the streets, and teach me how to ride the subway. He made me experience a kind of everyday life I had never felt before. It felt warm. I know in your eyes he has nothing, but he's simple and easygoing, always willing to listen to me." Being Being with him makes me truly happy and relaxed." Her words from back then still echoed in my ears, but her admiration and love for Tony had been worn down to almost nothing by just a few years of marriage. I interrupted Peter's rambling coldly, saying, "All of this is the result of her own choices. Don't bring her up to me again. I'm not interested in her life." Peter sighed and said, "All right, I won't mention her again. I just thought in case you still..." He didn't finish, but I knew what he meant. After all, I had loved Hailey deeply back then. Peter probably thought I still hadn't moved on, but he was wrong. I did love Hailey once, but at that time I believed her feelings matched mine. But since she didn't love me, why should I force it? In this world, many things can be achieved through effort, but love isn't one of them. Besides, I have my pride. As the heir to the R group, I'm now more concerned with the family's development than with elusive notions of love. From that day on, Peter wisely refrained from bringing up Hailey in front of me. However, Hailey suddenly started contacting me frequently every day. From a morning greeting when she woke up to a good night message before bed, she never missed a day. Even though I never responded, she persisted. The reason I hadn't blocked her was that we moved in the same social circles. We would inevitably run into each other, and if I cut her off completely, future encounters would just be awkward. A month later, as expected, I ran into her again at Serena Company's opening ceremony. As soon as Hailey saw me, she walked over with a glass of red wine, standing beside me with a smile, making small talk. I absent-mindedly responded to her, until she suddenly asked me, "Rocky, do you still hate me?" I lowered my gaze slightly and smirked, saying, "Hailey, hating someone takes a lot of time and energy. You're not worth it." The moment she heard this, her eyes instantly welled up with tears. "Rocky, do you really have no feelings for me at all?" I let out a cold laugh and mocked her bluntly. "Then tell me, what kind of feelings should I have for a married woman like you?" She froze, tears falling like broken pearls. "Rocky, I actually have long regretted marrying Tony." I didn't respond to her words. Instead, I casually remarked, "Hailey, he was the one you were willing to do anything to marry. How is it that after just 3 years you say you regret it?" Just as I finished speaking, I saw Tony standing at the banquet hall, entranced, looking around. When his gaze landed on Hailey and me, a clear look of nervousness and unease flashed in his eyes. "You'd better wipe away your tears now. Your husband is here," I said to Hailey. She followed my gaze. Tony hurried toward us, but accidentally bumped into a waiter carrying drinks. With a loud crash, a dozen cocktails fell to the floor. "Are you blind?" Feeling embarrassed by the attention, he vented his anger on the unfortunate waiter. "My new suit is ruined. Do you want me to have you fired?" The waiter, flustered, kept apologizing. "I'm sorry, sir. I can pay for it." But Tony refused to let it go. "Pay? Do you even know how much this suit costs? Someone like you could never afford it." The young waiter blushed deeply, repeatedly apologizing. The crowd began whispering, "It's just a suit. Is all this really necessary?" "Exactly. That suit is clearly last year's model from D-Brand. Didn't expect him to treat it like a treasure. Making such a fuss over a measly $50,000 or $60,000 suit, how embarrassing." Only then did Tony realize the disdainful looks people were throwing his way. Hurriedly, he waved the waiter off and said, "Forget it, just go. You don't have to pay." Hailey's face had already turned as pale as a sheet. I guess that at this moment she must have wanted to pretend she didn't know Tony. But everyone present knew that Tony was her husband, and their eyes shifted toward her with subtle ridicule. Utterly humiliated, she had no choice but to force a smile, apologize to the host, and leave early. Yet Tony didn't seem to feel embarrassed at all. He walked straight up to me, his tone laced with sarcasm. "Don't think I don't know the real reason you returned. But Hailey is my wife now. We even have a child together. You'd better stop having foolish thoughts about her." I looked at him, his smug expression making me chuckle, leaving him with just one sentence: "You'd better take care of your own wife first." I turned and left without a second glance. On the way home, I kept thinking, how had Tony changed so much in just a few years? I clearly remembered that in college Tony had worked part-time as a waiter. He should have been the one who understood how tough the job was. Yet now he had completely forgotten his own struggles and had no qualms about humiliating an 18 or 19-year-old kid in public. Was it the luxurious life after marrying Hailey that inflated his ego? Or was this just who he truly was all along, his previous humble and gentle persona, nothing more than an act? Faced with someone like him, I decided that from now on I would avoid him at all costs. But the more you want to avoid someone, the harder it is to escape them. A week later, I received a call from Hailey's mother. She invited me to her birthday dinner at their villa on the outskirts of the city. Ever since I returned, Hailey's mother had been calling me frequently. She had watched me grow up and had always been very fond of me. I could ignore Hailey, but I couldn't completely disregard her mother. As an elder, she personally extended an invitation. As the younger one one I couldn't refuse, so I reluctantly agreed. But when I arrived with a gift in hand, I realized that besides Hailey, there was no one else in the villa. Suppressing the anger rising in my chest, I placed the gift on the table and said, "Please wish Annie a happy birthday for me. I'll be leaving now." "Rocky, don't go." Hailey ran over and hugged me tightly from behind. "Let go," I commanded coldly. But instead of listening, she held on even tighter. "Rocky, all these years, I've never stopped thinking about you. I wanted to find you, but I was afraid you wouldn't want to see me. Now that you're finally back, can we start over?" I pried her hands off my waist with force, turned around, and said firmly, "Not a chance." She froze, seemingly unwilling to accept my rejection. I had no patience for further nonsense and walked toward the door. "Rocky," she called out to me longingly from behind, but I pretended not to hear her. Just as I was about to open the door, she suddenly rushed over and blocked my way. "Don't go, Rocky," she pleaded desperately. I turned my head slightly and said coldly, "Move." In the next second, she suddenly stood on her toes and kissed me. I forcefully pushed her away and roared in anger, "Hailey, are you insane?" She seemed startled by my fury, choking back sobs as she said, "Rocky, why can't you just give me another chance? I truly know I was wrong. I was too foolish and naive. I thought Tony was simple and easygoing. But after being with him, I realized he's not simple, he's just brainless. And he's not easygoing, he's just indecisive and spineless. I just want to divorce him now." I impatiently cut her off. "Enough. Your marriage problems are none of my concern. And even if you do divorce him, there will never be anything between us again." She still refused to believe my words, tears streaming as she said, "Rocky, you once loved me so much. I don't believe you could just let go so easily." There was a time when seeing her cry would have torn my heart apart. But now all I felt was overwhelming disgust. I had no interest in arguing with her anymore. I just wanted to leave. She suddenly dropped to her knees, clutching the hem of my pants, begging, "Rocky, just stay with me tonight, please. I've been living in hell these past few years. Tony doesn't understand me, my parents are disappointed in me, and everyone is waiting to see me fail. I feel so exhausted." I looked down at her kneeling before me, and for a moment I felt dazed. How did the proud princess I once cherished turn into this pathetic mess? Perhaps it's true. A terrible marriage can completely destroy a woman. "Hailey, get up," I said, forcing my patience. She shook her head, crying, refusing to move. Losing all patience, I turned and reached for the door, only to find Tony standing right outside. You guys." Tony was stunned for a moment before stepping forward and grabbing me by the collar, furious and seemingly wanting to say something. But when he glanced at Hailey, who was kneeling at my feet, he found himself at a loss for words. After all, the truth was right in front of him. It was his wife who was entangled with me, not the other way around. At that moment, Hailey finally came to her senses. She shouted at Tony, "Let go of Rocky." She stood up, wiped the tears off her face, straightened her clothes, and quickly regained her usual noble and dignified demeanor. Tony, startled by her outburst, had no choice but to release me, but he still glared at me viciously and warned, "Rocky, stay away from Hailey. Stop seducing her, or I'll beat you up every time I see you." I couldn't help but chuckle coldly. Looking at his weak facade, I smirked and said, "That's exactly what I should be telling you. Control your wife and make sure she stays away from me. She's the one chasing after me, not the other way around." As soon as I said that, both Hailey and Tony's faces turned red with anger. "Rocky, Hailey looked at me with teary eyes as if my words had deeply hurt her, but I couldn't care less. Without sparing them another glance, I walked straight out of the H family's mansion. On my way back to the city, I couldn't help but wonder just how dissatisfied was Hailey's mother with her son-in-law Tony, to the point that she actively helped her daughter cheat on him. For the next few months, Hailey kept fighting with Tony over getting a divorce. They even got into a physical altercation on the street. A bystander recognized them and uploaded the footage online, turning their scandal into the hottest gossip in town. But despite everything, Tony refused to let go. No matter how messy things got, he stubbornly clung to Hailey and refused to divorce her. One day, he even knelt in front of the H Corporation's headquarters, publicly begging Hailey to come back to him. However, Hailey seemed determined to leave him. Without hesitation, she went straight to court and filed for divorce. Their dramatic breakup turned the H family into the biggest laughingstock in our social circle, and their company's reputation suffered greatly as well. Time flew by, and by the end of the year, I was too busy with work to keep up with my childhood friends' latest gossip, so I had no idea how their drama eventually unfolded. On the night before the Lunar New Year holiday, I stayed at the office working until late at night. Just as I was about to head home, I unexpectedly saw a disheveled, hollow-eyed Hailey standing at the entrance of my company. I had no idea how long she had been waiting for me, but she looked utterly exhausted. As soon as she saw me, she immediately asked, asked. "Rocky, I heard that you're about to get engaged to Serena, the heir of the S Corporation." I nodded and simply replied, "Yeah. Next spring, Serena and I would officially hold our engagement ceremony." Serena was proactive, passionate, and expressive in her love. For the first time in my life, I felt valued in a relationship. 3 months ago, on her 23rd birthday, she made a wish in front of everyone and confessed that she liked me, hoping that we could be together. I was completely stunned at the time, but I couldn't reject her outright in front of so many people, so I nodded in agreement. After the party, I found her and told her that I had only ever seen her as a junior and that I had agreed to her confession earlier just to avoid embarrassing her. But she looked at me with her big watery eyes and said, "Senior, how do you know you won't fall for me after spending more time with me?" At that moment, I realized that the once shy junior had truly grown up. She even managed to make me blush. From that day on, I stopped resisting her advances. After all, someone who has endured the cold for too long will cherish warmth even more. Just last week, after a night of drinking at a business event, I came home with a severe stomachache, breaking out in cold sweat. Serena immediately contacted the top doctors at the S Corporation's hospital to arrange a consultation for me. Even after I recovered, she still worried about me. For an entire month, she personally cooked my meals and delivered them to my office every day. She even prepared traditional herbal remedies to help improve my digestive health. This kind of care and attention, something I never received from Hailey. Back when I was with Hailey, she never paid any attention to my daily needs. It was always me taking care of her. Looking back, I couldn't help but wonder, did Hailey ever truly love me? Hearing me openly acknowledge my relationship with Serena, Hailey's eyes welled up with tears. After a long silence, she forced a bitter smile and said, "Miss Serena is from a prestigious family and is highly educated. She's a perfect match for you. I wish you both a lifetime of happiness." I calmly said thank you and was about to leave, but she blocked my way and said, "Rocky, you probably won't believe me, but the only person I've ever truly loved is you. My feelings for Tony were just a fleeting attraction. Maybe it was because he was so different from everyone else in our circle that I was briefly drawn to him. But as I grew older, I realized that wasn't love." Hearing her say this now, I found it laughable. Even if I believed that everything she said was true, so what? A missed opportunity is still a missed opportunity. No one will wait forever, especially not someone who was once deeply hurt by her. She would never understand how during my first year abroad I dreamed of our past every night, waking up with an unbearable ache in my heart only to face the loneliness of an empty room. Maybe if she had said these words back then, I would have forgiven her and gone back to her without hesitation. But time is strange. I don't even know when it happened, but at some point I simply let go, and all the love I once had for her disappeared like smoke. I looked down at her and coldly said, "Sorry, but we have nothing to do with each other anymore. Whether you love me or hate me, that's your own problem. I don't care anymore." Hearing my resolute words, she collapsed onto the ground, hugging her knees and crying uncontrollably. But I felt no sympathy. Instead, I told her seriously, "Miss Hailey, I hope you won't bother me again in the future. We will never get back together. If you keep clinging to me, I'm afraid my fiancé will be unhappy." With that, I turned and walked toward the elevator. But just as the elevator doors opened, I saw Tony standing inside. As soon as he saw me, he lunged forward, locking his arm around my neck. "Rocky, you bastard. Hailey is divorcing me because of you. You already have everything. Why did you have to come back and take my woman?" Story continues with escalating conflict ending in tragedy. At my wedding with Serena, my childhood friends all attended. We laughed, reminisced, and there were no more awkward tensions between us. At 30, we had all found our own paths in marriage. Looking back, I sighed. When we were young, we were easily attracted to people who were different from us. But as we matured, we realized that true compatibility is what makes a marriage last. It was just a pity that Hailey only understood this lesson when it was too late. I hope that in her next life, she finds someone who truly loves her and lives a happy life. The end. If you like Kitten's story, please follow and like it. Updated every morning at 9 a.m.